Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another Bible study. Today we are going to be back in the book of Isaiah. We are going to be deep into end times prophecy. And so, if that's what you're looking for, you might want to be here, but I recommend first starting at the beginning because I hold some unconventional views and I am doing an unconventional Bible study. For those of you who have been tagging along, we are in Isaiah 23 because we left off in Isaiah 22. Prophecy is a thing, right? And once again, we are going to be in a prophecy that I'm not sure about the completion of, and then we're going to be dealing with in the future, pretty certainly. But this one really could have got added onto the last one. I thought that there was going to be more burdens, but not for a while at least. Let's dive into the text. This is the burden against Tyre. Tyre is an isthmus in the Mediterranean Sea around Lebanon. Wail, O ships of Tarshish, for Tyre is laid waste, without house or harbor. Word has reached them from the land of Cyprus. Be silent, O dwellers of the coastland, you merchants of Sidon, whose traders have crossed the sea. On the great waters come the grain of Sihor. The harvest of the Nile was the revenue of Tyre. She was the merchant of the nations. Be ashamed, O Sidon, the stronghold of the sea, for the sea has spoken. I have not been in labor or given birth. I have not raised young men or brought up young women. When the report reaches Egypt, they will writhe in agony over the news of Tyre. Cross over to Tarshish. Wail, O inhabitants of the coastland. Is this your jubilant city, whose origin is from antiquity, whose feet have taken her to settle far away? Who planned this against Tyre, the bestower of crowns? Whose traders are princes, whose merchants are renowned on the earth? The Lord of hosts planned it to defile all its great, glorious beauty, to disgrace all the renowned of the earth. Cultivate your land like the Nile, O daughter of Tarshish. There is no longer a harbor. The Lord has stretched out his hand over the sea. He has made kingdoms tremble. He has given a command that the strongholds of Canaan be destroyed. He said, You shall rejoice no more, O oppressed virgin daughter of Sidon. Get up and cross over to Cyprus. Even there you will find no rest. Look at the land of the Chaldeans, a people now of no account. The Assyrians destined it for desert creatures. They set up their siege towers and stripped its palaces. They brought it to ruin. Wail, O ships of Tarshish, for your harbor has been destroyed. At that time, Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, the span of a king's life. But at the end of 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the song of the harlot. Take up your harp, stroll through the city, O forgotten harlot. Make sweet melodies, sing many a song, so you will be remembered. And at the end of 70 years, the Lord will restore Tyre. Then she will return to hire as a prostitute and sell herself to all the kingdoms on the face of the earth. Yet her profits and wages will be set apart to the Lord. They will not be stored or saved, for her profit will go to those who live before the Lord, for abundant food and fine clothing. Now, Tyre has a long, long history of being a port in the Mediterranean, being a economic center in the Mediterranean. It has a long and storied history of being conquered and destroyed, and tidal waves and like all kinds of things have happened to Tyre. And so it is not really feasible to say for sure whether or not this has been fulfilled. It is entirely likely that it has been fulfilled. The destruction of the North and the South Harbor in Tyre is a thing. The timing of it is not entirely sure. There's always been the North Harbor of the Isthmus. Like, there's a whole lot that plays into this that we just cannot narrow this down. It is not nearly specific enough, right? Now, in the time that this happened was a time of turmoil. There was definitely a lot of change happening in the area. Rome was a thing, right? Things were kicking off in the area. So it is entirely possible that this has happened It's not that big of a deal doctrinally, right? Either it happened then or it will happen in the future. Either way, it doesn't matter. Uh, it was a sign to them, more than likely. This has happened more than likely. Now let's talk about the real issues of the day. This is where I am definitely going to be stepping on some toes. So if you have toes that get stepped on easily, this may not be the place for you. We will be talking about what I believe is going to be happening at the end of days and what I believe that this book says as we read along with it, right? And so, if you are unfamiliar with the 12,000 year disaster cycle, I definitely recommend that you find that video on my channel. It's a 12,000 year disaster cycle, and it explains a lot of the scientific side of what I'm going to be saying, so I'm not going to. There is scientific reasons to believe that these things will happen, and when I list out what I think is going to happen in that time, it's just that. It is my speculation. We are deep in the land of conspiracy here. So, God's judgment on the earth. Behold, the Lord lays waste to the earth and leaves it in ruins. He will twist its surface and scatter its inhabitants, people and priest alike, servant and master, maid and mistress, buyer and seller, lender and borrower, creditor and debtor. The earth will be utterly laid waste and thoroughly plundered. I do believe that this is going to happen, right? That it will twist its surface and scatter its inhabitants. We have talked about this several times in both Pitcast on this particular Bible study and in the disaster cycle playlist, that when the earth rotates 90 degrees, the bulge that is now our equator is going to resettle. Thing that's going to go in because it will be on the north and south, and centripetal force is going to force the new equator to bulge. It's going to cause some distortions. Where everybody winds up is up for speculation. Nobody knows for certain, although there are some good guesses. But the topography of the planet is most likely going to change. In my estimation, it's 100%, but I never like to say 100%, right? I like to say most likely because I'm not certain. I am just as certain as I can be without it actually have happened. But the earth will be utterly laid waste and thoroughly plundered. I think that is going to happen. We'll talk on that some more as we go along. For the Lord of the Word has spoken this word. The earth mourns and withers. The world languishes and fades away. The exalted of the earth waste away. The earth is defiled by its people. They have transgressed the laws. They have overstepped the decrees and broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore, a curse has consumed the earth, and its inhabitants must bear the guilt. The earth's dwellers have been burned, and only a few survive. Okay, so Isaiah is the prophet upon which all prophecies are built. All the rest of them use a different way of saying what he says in these books, right? This right here is telling you something. This last bit right here. The earth's dwellers have been burned, and only a few survive. This is after the twisting of the earth. The world languishes and fades. It mourns and withers. I believe what we have coming is what is part of what I call the hot part of the cycle, right? There's a cycle of hot and cold. We get a flood, we get a fire. We get a flood, we get a fire. I believe that Eden was a fire episode. I believe that the flood of Noah happened, and that was the water episode, and we are headed towards a fire episode. Solon, way back in ancient Greece, or Athens, was recorded as having given testimony of stories coming from Egypt from antiquity, which are long since lost, about this cycle and how it has happened many times before, that there is a hot one and a wet one, and a hot one and a wet one. I believe we are coming to the hot one, and this earth's dwellers have been burned and only a few survive. I believe that is true. I do not believe it has anything to do with your piety, right? Most people are not going to make it. I'm probably not going to make it. Where I'm at is in a high risk area. I'm probably not going to make it. I might. By the will of God, He'll have me somewhere else, or He will protect me supernaturally and divinely, or whatever. But most people are not going to make it. And if I don't make it, that's fine. I'm going home. I think that we should all try to be as prepared as possible for what is coming, because only a few will be spared. And it might be you. It might be not you, but your property for somebody else. It might be not you, but your children. And so you should make all the preparations that you can for if it were true. If it were true that we are coming up into a cycle of extreme drought, of extreme hardship, of literal fire falling from the sky, of the earth turning 90 degrees, of massive flooding due to that, but not necessarily as extensive as some people are looking for because of the way that the thing's going to happen. Few survive. That is something to pay attention to. And it's not talking about pious. Right? Earth's dwellers have been burned. That plays into what I believe is going to happen. That does not play into what Revelation necessarily says. The new wine dries up, the vine withers. All the merrymakers now groan, the joyful tambourines have ceased, the noise of revelers has stopped. The joyful harp is silent. They no longer sing and drink wine. Strong drink is bitter to those who consume it. The city of chaos is shattered. Every house is closed to entry. In the streets, they cry out for wine. All joy turns to gloom. Rejoicing is exiled from the land. The city is left in ruins. The gate is reduced to rubble. So will it be on the earth and among the nations, like a harvested olive tree, like a gleaning after a grape harvest. They raise their voices, they shout for joy. From the west, they proclaim the majesty of the Lord. Therefore, glorify the Lord in the east. Extol the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, in the islands of the sea. That is the region of the sea, the area of the sea, the dry land by the sea. There's many different ways to interpret islands there. It's not necessarily an actual island. And from the ends of the earth, we hear singing. Glory to the righteous one. But I said, I am wasting away. I am wasting away. Woe is me. The treacherous betray, the treacherous deal in treachery. Terror and pit and snare await you. O dweller of the earth, whoever flees the sound of panic will fall into the pit, and whoever climbs from the pit will be caught in the snare. For the windows of heaven are open, and the foundations of the earth are shaken. The earth is utterly broken apart. The earth is split open. The earth is shaken violently. The earth staggers like a drunkard and sways like a shack. Earth's rebellion weighs it down, and it falls, never to rise again. All right, so here we have another talking point, right? I believe what is going to happen, and I've talked about it before, is due to the electromagnetics of the universe and where we are in relation to that, where our particular part of the wave hits, right? Part of this thing that is going to happen is our natural magnetic shield around the earth is going to be disrupted greatly, right? It is going to be part of the swap and all of that. And part of what it does is keep us a visible sky. That is why we have a blue sky, because the radioactive magnetics around the planet hold in place the things that we need for the light diffusion to refract off of the ocean and show us a blue sky. And when those magnetics are disrupted in the way that I foresee happening, the sky is going to roll back. We won't have a blue sky for a few days at least, right? It's probably going to be 3. That seems to be the number that most people tend to agree on in these writings. And so for about 3 days, you will not see a blue sky. You will not be overwhelmed by the sun in the manner that we are now if you look at it, because the the atmospheric refraction is going to be different. You will be bombarded by solar energy. I do not at all recommend you go back out until the sky is normal. Do not go outside. Take all precaution to keep yourself shielded. Part of that as well is going to be that when the sky rolls back, we won't see the blue sky, but we also will not see stars in the same manner that we do now. Part of the reason why we see stars is the same reason that we see the blue sky. And so when that is disrupted, we won't see stars. It'll be a black sky. The stars will fall from heaven. You won't be able to see them for a few days anyway. The foundations of the earth are shaken. We are going to turn 90 degrees. That is as close to certain as I can be that this event is probably going to happen. It is, in my estimation, going to be a result of a galactic trigger, right? Something is going to happen. It can be the sun with a micronova, such as Ben Davidson. I think there's going to be like a grounding event of some sort. Like we're going to receive a plasma discharge in a very direct manner, as opposed to just ejecta from the micronova. But either way is entirely plausible. I think that we will see gigantic arcs of lightning, and it's going to disrupt our magnetics. It's going to happen, and that's what's going to cause the whole thing. With sufficient injection of external temperatures into our core, which is what happens when lightning strikes, if there is sufficient in there, then it is going to change the chemistry of the core in sufficient manner for it to be looser than it normally is. And so the weight of Antarctica and stuff, like, there's science. But it's going to change everything. The earth will be shaken violently when it happens. It will be split open. Right? There will be distortion of the crust due to isostatic pressure being relieved and placed, and the crust will move and flex, and things will break. If you're hiding in a cave in the earth, you're probably not going to enjoy your time. In that day, the Lord will punish the host of heaven above and the kings below of the earth below. That was just talking about the stars disappearing. That's this, right? Punish the host of heaven, which is the stars in the sky, and the kings of the earth below. There's a lot of people building bunkers right now. There's a lot of people who you could definitely consider kings of the earth. They are the top tier of the top percent. And they're building places underground to go and hide. And that may not be the best place to be. If you get a chance to hide in one of these places, I do not recommend it. They will be gathered together like prisoners in a pit. They will be confined to a dungeon and punished after many days. The moon will be confounded, and the sun will be ashamed, for the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before his elders with great glory. So, the moon will be confounded. The orbit will be disrupted, probably, right? That is a very high likelihood. Now, exactly how or in what manner, I don't know. It may not disrupt the orbit of the moon at all, but it might. It might cast it completely off. We may not have a moon anymore afterwards. The sun will be ashamed. You won't see the sun, right? We talked about that just now. When the blue sky rolls back, the thing that makes the sun so hard to look at is the sky. And so if you're on the other side of the atmosphere, you can look at the sun. Right? If you're in outer space, which is a thing, if you're on the space shuttle, which is a thing, or the space station, which is a thing, or even visiting the moon, you can look at the sun and you can see it. Now, it is highly radioactive. It will probably burn your eyes, but it's not going to blind you in the same manner. Right? And so, that's what we're talking about here. You're not going to see the sun in the same way. It's not going to cast light on the ground in the same way. The reason you can see the way we see is because of the sky. It's because of the blue in the sky. And when that is gone, like, Outside will look like night in the middle of the day. The sun will be in the sky. And the moon will have a new path, because if you rotate 90 degrees, where your north and south is now is not necessarily where they're going to wind up. It might be, depends on how the flip happens, but there's a good chance that the moon is no longer going to go to what you recognize as east to west. Your east to west may change. And so it will be confounded. The sun will be ashamed. Oh, now, the Lord of hosts reigning on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, that is some prophetic stuff that is put in there, right? It is entirely possible, I guess, that somebody will reign on Mount Jerusalem. I personally do not believe that it will be the Lord God Almighty himself, because I do not believe that he manifests inside of himself in that manner. And so it could very well be that there is a chosen one who appears, one of those great singular actors that happen from time to time for Israel's sake, and that they rule from this mountain that is raised up above all the other ones around it. That is possible. O Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you, I will praise your name, for you have worked wonders, plans formed long ago, in perfect faithfulness. Indeed, you have made the city a heap of rubble. The fortified town a ruin, the fortress of strangers is a city no more. It will never be rebuilt. Therefore, a strong people will honor you. The cities of ruthless nations will revere you. For you have been a refuge for the poor, a stronghold for the needy in distress, a refuge from the storm and a shade from the heat. For the breath of the ruthless is like rain against a wall, like heat in a dry land. You subdue the uproar of foreigners, as the shade of a cloud cools the heat. So the song of the ruthless is silenced. On this mountain the Lord of hosts will prepare a banquet for all the peoples, a feast of aged wine, of choice meat, of finely aged wine. On this mountain he will swallow up the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. The Lord God will wipe away the tears from every face, and remove the disgrace of his people from the whole earth. This is interesting. Now, this very well could be the afterlife, right? Because we have a history of this cycle happening and of people dying, but never do we have a history of people living forever. It is possible that on the other side of this, we are not affected in the same way that we were by aging. Who knows? That is entirely possible. But part of our process here, part of our learning here on earth, is the fact that we are going to die. That is a major determining factor in what you do with your life. If you were going to live forever, there would be no drive to achieve anything. This could very well be that, right? I don't discount that, but it's probably not. This is probably talking about the death of most peoples, right? On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will prepare a banquet. He will swallow up the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. Let's see what the footnote of death in victory, as cited in Corinthians. Let's pop that out real quick. We're gonna look at this. Wipe away the tears from death and perpetuate. Destroy death forever is what he say. Wipe away all tears from every face and remove the disgrace of his people, the reproach of his people from the whole earth. Okay. Wipe away the tears from every face and remove the disgrace of his people from the whole earth. So this could be in eternity. This could be on the planet. We could be facing on the other side of this something that we don't know, right? Something that when we had the Eden event, the lives that are recorded following the Eden event up to the flood event are really long. Now, that could be because of Nephilim intervention, right? That could be because they were mating with the angels. It could be because God granted them an extra long 1,000-year life. It could be a variety of things. It could be not recorded correctly. It could be a lot of things. But it is a possibility that as we get closer to this, life cycles change, right? Coming out of the other side of this, our auras could be completely different. The electromagnetics that hold you together, which are a real thing, could be something completely different. And we could not die. That is a great possibility to think on. I do not believe that this is talking about an after-death situation on the planet. If it is talking about after death, it is talking about somewhere else. And in that day it will be said, surely this is our God. We have waited for him. He has saved us. This is the Lord for whom we have waited. Let us rejoice and be glad in his salvation. For the hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain, but Moab will be trampled in his place, as straw is trodden in the dung pile. He will spread out his hands within it, as the swimmer spreads his arms to swim. His pride will be brought low, despite the skills of his hand. The high-walled fortress will be brought down, cast to the ground, into the dust. If the mountain in Jerusalem is raised and the hand of the Lord rests on that mountain, whatever that may be, Moab, which is the desert to the south and to the east of Jerusalem, may be distorted in a way that is done like this. It will be trampled down. I don't know. It's something to look at, something to look forward, but I don't believe this is a current time prophecy at all. Anywhere in this, I don't believe it is anywhere in this a current time prophecy. So I don't think we have actually seen these things happen. I could be wrong. This could have already taken place, but I don't believe it has. I believe that this is end times prophecy of some very, here's the thing. I believe that if this is true, you will have no doubt about the event when it happens. When the earth trembles and the sky and all that, then we're going to know. There's not going to be a question of, well, could that be it? Right? I believe that we're going to get a sign in the sky, and it is going to be visible both day and night. Right? Now, that is dependent upon the fact that space is directional. So you being able to see it 24 hours a day is not going to be possible. There will be a period of time where it will be on the opposite side of your vision. But other than that, it will be visible. If it's the daytime where it's supposed to be visible, you'll be able to see it. If it's the nighttime, you'll be able to see it, and there will be no mistaking it. Right? It will be a very dire sign. Now, whether or not we get that sign correct in our newscast is highly doubtful, but when you see it and people start all over the earth, everybody everywhere is and starts being fearful, right? All of the things we saw here where the wine tastes bitter and the revelry stops and all of the joy turns to sadness. That is for this day. It is for this sign. It is for all of these happenings. And so until we see that sign, until there is no doubt, then I don't believe the end times are here in any part. Right? The lead up to it, it could be anything. The wars and the signs and all of the things that lead up to it, that could be anything. Until we get the definitive sign, just be ready. In that day, this song will be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. Salvation is established as its walls and ramparts. Open the gates so that a righteous nation may enter, one that remains faithful. You will keep in perfect peace the steadfast of mind, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, because God the Lord is the rock eternal. For he has humbled those who dwell on high. He lays the lofty city low. He brings it down to the ground. He casts it into the dust. Feet trample it down, the feet of the oppressed, the steps of the poor. The path of the righteous is level. You clear a straight path for the upright. Yes, we wait for you, O Lord. We walk in the paths of your judgments. Your name and renown are the desire of our souls. My soul longs for you in the night. Indeed, my spirit seeks you at dawn. For when your judgments come upon the earth, the people of the world learn righteousness. Though grace is shown to the wicked man, he does not learn righteousness. In the land of the righteousness, he acts unjustly and fails to see the majesty of the Lord. O Lord, your hand is upraised, but they do not see it. They will see your zeal for your people and be put to shame. The fire set for your enemies will consume them. O Lord, you will establish peace for us, for all that we have accomplished. You have done for us. O Lord, our God, other lords beside you have had dominion, but your name alone do we confess. The dead will not live. The departed spirits will not rise. Therefore you have punished and destroyed them. You have wiped out all memory of them. You have enlarged the nation, O Lord. You have enlarged the nation. You have gained glory for yourself. You have extended all the borders of the land. And we're going to stop, even though we're not all the way through this. I've been trying to go all the way through, but this is important, and I don't want to forget. This is an in that day prophecy. This is a in the end times prophecy. This is a then prophecy. This is a different prophecy than the one we get at the end. The dead will not live. The departed spirits will not rise. Therefore you have punished them and destroyed them. You have wiped out all memory of them. This is an end times prophecy. This is not a, in that day, you will call all the spirits who have departed, which is what we get later. This is the dead will not live, and the departed spirits will not rise. O Lord, they sought you out in their distress. When you disciplined them, they poured out a quiet prayer. As a woman with child about to give birth writhes and cries out in pain, so were we in your presence, O Lord. We were with child, we writhed in pain, but we gave birth to wind. We have given no salvation to the earth, nor brought any life to the world. Your dead will live, their bodies will rise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust. And so now we have a completely different prophecy. Now the dead will live, their bodies will rise, which is the same as what we get at the end. That's a problem, right? And I mean, you can leave it up to a poetic interpretation, I get that. But you go from the dead will not live, the departed will not rise, to the dead will live, and their bodies will rise. For your dew is like the dew of the morning, and the earth will bring forth her dead. Go, my people, enter your rooms, and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourselves a little while until the wrath has passed. For behold, the Lord is coming out of his dwelling to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth will reveal her bloodshed, and no longer conceal her slain. So, this is one of those things that we will not know until we get there. You can speculate on it. You can take the further prophecies and say what you want. But those are all expansions upon this one. And this one says both ways. Now, I don't believe that what we have currently, like in Revelation, is true correctly. For the simple fact of, even now, right now in prophecy at Isaiah, there is no heaven. Right? There is a land of the dead. There is a Sheol, the place where souls go when they depart from here. And there are some thoughts of punishment there, but not really in the way that we conceive of them now, right? What there is separation from God and reunification from God. And you are separated from God until God has decided you are ready for reunification. Whether that means the confession of sin and the anointing of a bodily fluid upon you, or if it is the confession of sin and the asking for forgiveness, or if it is something completely different. This is telling us that the bodies will rise, but I think that that is the poetic interpretation, right? He tells us that there is none. There is not really a concept of that, but there is just the beginnings of thinking of hell. They're just beginning to get the contemplations of the punishment of the afterlife, as opposed to the big nothing, the long dirt nap, the great sleep. And so now they're starting to think about the eternal in that manner. And so when he's talking about this, I believe it's poetical interpretation, but that is my interpretation of it, right? You are free to believe whatever you want to believe. But this part right here, this part is important. We have a couple of times had something similar to this. We've had prophets told to go and hide because the glory of the Lord was about to pass. I believe that what is happening is when you see these things, right? When you see the earth shake and the sky roll back and the stars disappear and the sun is humbled and the moon is confounded, all of these things that have just been described, when you see these things, this is the instruction, right? Go enter your rooms and shut the doors behind you. When I told you don't go out in it, I mean that. There are people out there who are telling you you are going to get superpowers if you walk out in it. You might, I can't discount it, right? But probably not. What you're probably going to wind up with is a severe case of radiation. Like, there's a good chance you're going to get it in your house too. There's a good chance your house is going to fall down upon you. But being out and about when the sky is rolled back is an enormously bad idea. Go enter your rooms and shut the doors behind you. Hide yourselves a little while until the wrath is past. Now, you're not going to be hiding in your room for 7 years, people. It's going to be a short while. It's going to be 3 days. Now, the ramifications leading up to may take 7 years, right? From when we see the sign until the actual events may take 7 years. There's a good possibility that it will. But the actual wrath event itself is going to be pretty quick. The actual rolling back of the skies and the whole destruction sequence will be pretty quick. So if you're alive after the 3 days, you're probably going to make it. For behold, the Lord is coming out of his dwelling. This, I believe, is talking about the galactic current sheet, right? The electromagnetics that hold our universe together. And when we see whatever the sign is, I believe it's going to be larger than a star, though. It's going to be something big. It's going to resemble heads coming off of a thing. And so it will be something coming out of his dwelling. That's what this is saying. Like, I believe that these prophets can see forward. They interpret according to their own beliefs in things, the same way that we do, right? If you were to read a prophecy from 10,000 years ago, you would interpret that in the manner of your belief, most likely, unless you are working at being more open-minded. Anyway. In that day, the Lord will take his sharp, great, and mighty sword, and bring judgment on Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the coiling serpent, and he will slay the dragon of the sea in that day. Now, Leviathan. Leviathan is a serpent, a sea monster, or a dragon. It is referenced many times. We have talked, we didn't talk about, yeah, we did. We went through Job. It is a sea monster and a dragon. That does not necessarily mean that it is an earthbound sea or an earthbound dragon. It can be a constellation in the sea of the sky, because there is the waters below and the waters above, and it is separated by the waters here. And our waters here is the air we breathe, right? Our atmosphere is the waters here. The waters below is actual water, and down below, and the waters above is the stars in the sky and outer space. And what is going to happen is, in my estimation, we will see this great, sharp, and mighty sword, right? Bring judgment on Leviathan, the fleeing serpent. Let's go ahead and look up these. Fleeing is a constellation of that name. Isn't that something? Bariak, fleeing. Eclipse dragon. The serpent and the constellation by that name. Crooked, noble, and piercing. I believe that this is part of the sign, the sign in the sky, right? I believe that this is, let's do this one. This is the coiling serpent, right? Which is Draco, the constellation, torturous and crooked. He will bring judgment on Leviathan. This is talking about in the sky, and he will display the dragon of the sea in the sky. Sing about a fruitful vineyard. I am the Lord, I am its keeper. I water it continually, I guard it night and day, so no one can disturb it. I am not angry. If only thorns and briars confronted me, I would march and trample them. I would burn them to the ground, or let them lay claim to my protection. Let them make peace with me. Yes, let them make peace with me. In the days to come, Jacob will take root. Israel will bud and blossom, and fill the whole world with fruit. As the Lord struck Israel, as he struck her oppressors, has she killed, like those who slayed her, by warfare and exile. You contend with her, and removed her with a fierce wind, as on the day the east wind blows. Therefore, Jacob's guilt will be atoned for, and the full fruit of the removal of his sin will be this: when he makes all the altar stones like crushed bits of chalk, no Asherah poles or incense altars will remain standing. For the fortified cities lies deserted, a homestead abandoned, a wilderness forsaken. There the calves graze where they lie down. They strip its branches bare. When its limbs are dry, they are broken off. Women come and use them for kindling. This is the people without understanding. Therefore, their Maker has no compassion on them, and their Creator shows them no favor. In that day, the Lord will thresh from the flowing Euphrates to the Wadi of Egypt. And you, O Israelites, will be gathered one by one. And in that day a great ram's horn will sound, and those who are perishing in Assyria will come forth with those who were exiles in Egypt, and they will worship the Lord on the holy mountain in Jerusalem. Okay, so generally speaking, whenever you see vineyard, it is talking about Israel, right? Now, in the New Testament, they take a new vine and they create a new vineyard, right? But here in the Old Testament, it is not talking about the New Covenant. It is talking about actual Israel. Isaiah was fervent for Israel. He was on fire for Israel. He was not on fire for the New Covenant, right? It was not revealed to him. All of this he prophesies with full expectation of the people of Israel fulfilling. Now, whether or not that is true, not mine for debate here. We'll talk about that in the New Testament. But Jacob will take root. Israel will bud and blossom and fill the whole world with fruit. Now, New Testament people, Christians, will take this and talk about the line of David gaining kingship on the cross and filling the world with fruit. But that is not what he is talking about, right? In his own mind, what he is talking about is Israel returning to the land. It is said down here that will happen. And it probably will. Right? The people who are there, if the prophecies are correct, that area is going to be highly contested, and there will be a lot of problems in that area for a while. The sword of the Lord is going to fall in that area. There will be several problems in that area, and people will return at that point. Right? It's a guarantee. If you're alive, and you're in that area, you're going to make your way there. It's going to be hard to do from over here. Right? We don't even have sailing ships anymore. Oh. Jacob's guilt will be atoned for, and the full fruit of the removal of the sin will be his. Jacob's sin. What was Jacob's sin? The best I can remember, Jacob was the guy who stole the birthright. Yeah. Esau. Yeah. Okay. Woe to the majestic crown of Ephraim's drunkards, to the fading flower of his glorious splendor, set on the summit of the fertile valley, the pride of those overcome by wine. Behold, the Lord has one who is strong and mighty, like a hailstorm or destructive tempest, like a driving rain or a flooding downpour. He will smash that crown to the ground. The majestic crown of Ephraim's drunkards will be trampled and underfoot. The fading flower of his beautiful splendor, set on the summit above the fertile valley, will be like a ripe fig before the summer harvest. Whoever sees it will take it in his hand and swallow it. On that day the Lord of hosts will be a crown of glory, a diadem of splendor to the remnant of his people, a spirit of justice to him who sits in judgment, and a strength to those who repel the onslaught at the gate. These also stagger from wine and stumble from strong drink. Priests and prophets reel from strong drink and are befuddled by wine. They stumble because of strong drink, muddled in their visions and stumbling in their judgments. For all their tables are covered with vomit. There is not a place without filth. This is an interesting one. Right? On that day, the Lord of hosts will be a crown of glory, a diadem of splendor to the remnant of his people. These also stagger from wine, stumble from drink, the priest and the prophets. Right? So this is saying that the priest and the prophets are not going to be living holy lives. I guess. Whom is he trying to teach? To whom is he explaining his message? To infants, just weaned from milk? To babies, removed from the breast? For they hear order on order, or order on order, line on line, line on line, a little here, a little there. Indeed, with mocking lips and foreign tongues, he will speak to this people, to whom he has said, This is the place of rest, let the weary rest. This is the place of repose. But they would not listen. And then on the word of the Lord to them will become order on order, order on order, line on line, line on line, a little here, a little there, so that they will go stumbling backwards and will be injured and snared and captured. This is talking about the law. This is talking about the law being useless. Now, this staggering from wine, like, if you read that literally, then, like, that's kind of hard to place. But if you take it as they are spewing vomit from their mouth because they are ill-informed, then it's got a whole different connotation to it, right? Who's he trying to teach? Who's he trying to explain his message? To infants? Somebody who does not understand. When they hear order on order, order on order, this is talking about the minutia of the law. This is talking about when you are preaching and you're hammering somebody with the book and the law and their sins. That's what this is talking about. And he says this is the place of rest. Let them rest. This is the place of repose. But they would not listen. And so these pastors keep hammering people with this sin. And instead of drawing people in and letting them find their way to God, who will change their lives, they're telling them they have to change their lives to find God. And that's just simply not true. You let the weary in, let them rest. That does not mean open the borders and let just anybody in. You let the weary in, those seeking rest, not the ones seeking work necessarily. Definitely not the ones with ill intent. But don't get captured, don't get ensnared by the minutia of the law. Therefore hear the word of the Lord, O scoffers who rule this people in Jerusalem. For you said, we have made a covenant with death. We have fashioned an agreement with Sheol. When the overwhelming scourge passes through, it will not touch us, because we have made lies our refuge and falsehood our hiding place. This is talking about the rapture. Did that just set you off? If so, you got some explaining to do, Lucy, because obviously you haven't been paying attention. But I think this might even be the first time we're really going to talk about it. But there is no rapture. the rapture is the death of a lot of people. That is foretold. This is saying, in no uncertain terms, that he is still dealing with the same God in the end times. And who has made their agreement with death? Who among us has guaranteed their salvation? Now, I tell you all the time that if you ask for forgiveness, you receive it, and I believe that, right? I do not guarantee that, because that is entirely up to you and God. But we have several religions that are founded around this whole idea of, I'm going to survive death through this act. Now, whether you like to think of it as that or not, it's what you're doing when you are accepting the sacrifice of Jesus in return for your redemption and entry into the kingdom of heaven. Right? You are making a deal to overcome death with eternal life. That is somewhat bound into this prophecy. But what this right here is telling you, the cornerstone in Zion, you made a covenant with death and fashioned an agreement with Sheol, that when the scourge passes through the end times, when the sign appears, it will not touch us, because we have made lies our refuge and falsehood our hiding place. The rapture is not mentioned in the Bible. Now, I will admit that I could be wrong on my view of the divinity of Jesus Christ. Right? I fully admit that I could be wrong there. I believe that there is no need for an intervention, that there is no need for the mediation that Jesus was, and that his sacrifice was a whole different thing. I don't believe it was meant to be taken the way that it was, that it was the replacement for you giving up your sins. But there's a lot of people, like a whole lot of people. And I'm not calling out every Christian for this, right? Because there are some really good, true believing Christians. But there are a lot of people who believe that because they walked down that aisle and they stood in front of that altar and they said a prayer with a preacher and they did not change anything about their life, but they got dunked in some water and they claimed the covering of some blood, that they're going to be okay. That because they made this outward sign of faith, which is a thing, and did not change what is within them, that they're going to get raptured out because they have claimed Jesus' name. That when the time comes and the trumpet sounds, they're going to disappear. But they have made lies their refuge. They have taken the rapture and turned it into a thing that justifies them not doing now in God's kingdom what they are called to do now in God's kingdom. Don't make lies your refuge and your hiding place. This is what the Lord God says. See, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. The one who believes will never be shaken. I will make justice the measuring line and righteousness the level. Hail will sweep away your refuge of lies, and water will flood your hiding place. Your covenant with death will be dissolved, and your agreement with Sheol will not stand. When the overwhelming scourge passes through, you will be trampled by it. And as often as it passes through, it will carry you away. It will sweep through morning after morning and night by night. The understanding of this message will bring sheer terror. Indeed, the bed is too short to stretch out on, and the blanket too small to wrap around you. For the Lord will rise up as at Mount Perazim. He will rouse himself as in the valley of Gibeon to do his work, his strange work, and perform his task, his disturbing task. So, now, do not mock, or your shackles will become heavier. Indeed, I have heard from the Lord of hosts a decree of destruction against the whole land. Listen and hear my voice. Pay attention and hear what I say. Does the plowman plow for planting every day? Does he continuously loosen and harrow the soil? When he has leveled its surface, does he not sow caraway and scatter cumin? He plants wheat in rows, and barley in plots, and rye within its border. For his God instructs and teaches him properly. Surely caraway is not threshed with a sledge, and the wheel of a cart is not rolled over the cumin. But caraway is beaten out with a stick, and cumin with a rod. Grain for bread must be ground, but it is not endlessly threshed, though the wheels of a cart roll over it, and horses do not crush it. This also comes from the Lord of hosts, who is wonderful in counsel and excellent in wisdom. And that, I believe, is where we're going to wrap this one up. So, yep. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a very difficult topic. I know that today I stepped on several toes. I am not apologetic for it. It had to be done. I'm not intentionally stepping on anybody's toes. I never intentionally mean to hurt anybody's feelings. But just because you have believed something for a long time does not necessarily make it true. I believe that there is sufficient evidence for no rapture in here, that the rapture argument is null. But we will continue to look at it as we go forward. I believe that this as well, when it's talking, let's look at it real quick. Like, we're running low on time, so I didn't want to talk too much. But this stone in Zion, I don't believe that this is talking about in the future in the way that we think it is. I don't believe that it is talking about Jesus. I know that that is an extremely unconventional take. It is talking about justice being the measuring line and righteousness being the level, and that is God. Now, you can believe that Jesus is God. I'm not going to argue that today. We will do that later. But this is talking directly about the covenant being dissolved with the stone, right? Now, the covenant with death, in my estimation, is what we're talking about with Christianity. It is the lies and the refuge and the falsehood. The rapture is part of that, but it is not all of that. I believe that the great deception was the intervention. It was the mediation being necessary. From the very beginning, the great deception started in Exodus. And that's where we're going to wrap it up. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. And you are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. This has been Pit State. Peace.